Hello, friends. We've already looked at the topic of deification in Paul in several videos on becoming divine, but I'd like to, in this series, to take a closer look at this topic and just give it a concentrated presentation so that everything makes sense. This is not the typical way of reading Paul, but I think it is a plausible way in his Greco-Roman context. It's tempting here to contrast Paul with the Judaism known from the so-called Old Testament or Hebrew Bible. But remember that Paul is in the Hellenistic world, and other Hellenistic Jews of his time had come to similar conclusions. So Paul's emphasis on immortality, astral bodies, assimilation to a god, cosmic rule, although they might sound foreign, do belong to the Judaism of his time. So we never want to reinscribe the Judaism versus Hellenism divide. We can place Paul within both Judaism and Hellenism at one and the same time, and out of that to bring out a doctrine of deification. And if not a doctrine, then at least a vision of our future or eschatological transformation into something superior than what we are now, ontologically higher, fitted for a new celestial environment, and ready to rule the cosmos. So today I'll be giving a very brief summary presentation of chapter 4 of Becoming Divine. For the full book-length argument for Paul and deification, see my first book, We Are Being Transformed. For those of you who are patrons, you get this book for free, and Becoming Divine is pretty reasonably priced these days. I'll throw in my Amazon author page in the description in case you want to check it out. You'll often hear that the good news, or Paul's version of the gospel, is about justification by faith. And that is certainly a very Protestant way of reading Paul. And it certainly was something emphasized by Martin Luther in the Reformation of the 16th century. But that way of reading Paul and reading salvation in Paul has long been seen as wanting and very selective, if not fragmented. When we look at the whole of Paul's work, his focus is really on participation in God. That's how we are saved. We participate in the divine qualities of God. And one of those qualities might be justice. In fact, it is justice. But there are other qualities which make it clear that Paul's gospel is really about deifying people. And not just individuals, a whole race of those beings whom he calls the children of God, or the huioi to theou. He wants to make all the redeemed co-heirs with Christ, as he says. And for him, Christ, the anointed one, is the anointed king of the cosmos. And humans are co-heirs with that anointed king so that they become co-rulers. The good news of Paul's gospel is also a message about deathlessness. We attain deathlessness through inheriting a pneumatic body, which is also a kind of astral body, a body which Paul calls a body of glory. So this isn't Plato. This isn't about a natural immortality of the soul. Paul thinks in terms of bodies. Pneuma is a kind of subtle body. And just as we now have bodies empowered by soul, we will have bodies empowered by pneuma, and I think also made up of pneuma, which is a kind of astral energy. It is the body of stars. It is the somatic platform of stars. Stars have subtle bodies, according to ancient cosmology, bodies of fire, the subtle fire of the ether. And it was this kind of body, free of heaviness, not tied down to earth, and also not composite, that is, made up of multiple parts that can dissolve. It was this kind of body that Paul promised to his converts. I sometimes call this a spirit body so that I can avoid talking about a pneumatic body, which is somewhat cumbersome. But spirit for Paul, if we're going to use that, that's also a material thing. It's not something that is immaterial. So it's always important to keep this in mind. But Paul's gospel is not just the good news about attaining deathlessness for every Peter, Paul, and Harry. It is the good news of attaining cosmic rule. It's really rule, when you think about it, ruling power, that for Greeks and Romans and Jews in the ancient world, that's what divine power was. It was a royal power, an intensified royal power over the cosmos, cosmic rule, indisputable sovereignty. And this is one of those attributes of God which God allows people to share in. And it's because Christ shares in God's sovereign power that Christ is a God. And it's because believers, or human beings who believe in Christ, share in this sovereign power to rule the cosmos, that they also earn the nature and the name of gods. Just read Paul with fresh eyes, and you'll see that this is how he speaks and thinks. He thinks cosmically, he thinks big picture, he thinks ontologically, not just eschatologically. Humans will have the power to judge the world and angels. Humans will have the power to be kings, co-heirs with the ultimate king and judge, who is Christ. They already have, but they will realize ownership over all things. Needless to say that this power over angels includes probably both good and evil angels. Again, one of the messages of early Christianity, if not of Paul himself, was that believers gained power over demons, or daimones. That is, these spirit beings who exist in the lower heavens, who were superior to humanity in terms of their bodies. So gaining power over these entities is already a kind of transcendence of humanity. The power of exorcism is the power to exercise a prerogative over a being who is actually a superior being. And that's really important to note, that when Christians are claiming the power to exercise, they are claiming a divine power and a divine prerogative, power over beings who are, or at least were, considered divine. Now, Richard Bauckham has written several books on why Christ could be viewed as a God, and he came up with this idea of sharing the divine identity, or in his words, sharing the unique divine identity. Well, If it can be shared, it's not unique anymore. But I think Bauckham has a point, and it's a point that can be extended far beyond Christ. It can be extended to all believers. It's a mere syllogism when you think about it, that in Paul's gospel, God exercises sovereignty, and he shares that sovereignty through the redeemed. And it's not only sovereignty, but deathlessness that are parts or constituents of God's identity. Therefore, by granting deathlessness and sovereign power of the cosmos, God gives or grants a share of God's identity. This is not hard to understand, but I think that for whatever reason in the West and in churches, we have succeeded in annulling the great power of Paul's message. I think, you might believe that all of this is crazy, and that's an important first step. But whether you think that it's crazy or not, I guess is not the point. The point is to historically understand what Paul was saying and what made his message so amazing and so attractive enough for people to dislodge themselves from their own native cults and join the cult of a new God who promised new and what they thought were better benefits. This was a very quiet revolution, and the revolution has in many ways been muffled. So, to sum up, there's really three steps in how I understand deification in Paul. Deification involves gaining immortality or deathlessness and superhuman power through assimilation to God. In Paul's gospel, one attains deathlessness by obtaining a deathless pneumatic body, a body of the same substance as the stars. One also obtains superhuman power and power over superhuman beings, and that power is expressed by rule over the cosmos. That's the destiny of the redeemed. That's what we'll be doing. We won't be playing with hula hoops in heaven. We will be very busy ruling the cosmic spheres, the vastness of the universe. And for Paul, these two divine benefits, these two ways that we participate in the divine identity, are an expression of our assimilation to a God, in this case Christ, who is the model of the future divine humanity, or I should say, the divine state we will be in that transcends humanity. This is Paul's message. Thanks so much to everybody for watching. Again, for those of you who hop on Patreon, you can download the entire PDF book of We Are Being Transformed. And for a condensed, summarized version of the book, you can read chapter 4 of my popular book called Becoming Divine, An Introduction to Deification in Western Culture. For now, I just want to say again, thanks for watching, and I hope to see you all again soon.